All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Comics for All. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. My name is Jameson, your host here at Comics for All, where comics, creativity, and community all connect. I'm a comics librarian. So for Friday, February 13th, so Friday the 13th, we have the amazing creator, Jeremy Whitley, joining us. So, Jeremy, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to join us.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to be here talking about your love of comics, but most importantly, your Zoop campaign that's got a cool double issue going on. So, as a reader centric channel, being a comics librarian, I like to ask everyone who comes on first, what hooked you into comics as a reader?
Um, I think my dad is probably mostly to blame, because my dad was very into comics. My dad's a big nerd. He got me into a lot of the stuff that I'm still into today. But I think it's some combination of that and you know the X-Men animated series, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
in its big zenith, its big first run when I was just the right age for it. I was watching that and getting tapes of it at Pizza Hut with with my Book It stuff. So I think like those two things really sort of hit it for me, and then X-Men sort of became um, my lifelong superhero comics guys. There are a lot of other ones I like, a lot of that are maybe even my favorites in some respect more, but X-Men has certainly been with me the longest.
Absolutely. And I went off screen to grab my X-Men, the comic series adaptation from the 90s. So it's got all
Oh yeah.
the comics that were originally written to go with the animated show. So it was pretty cool to actually see that. Uh,
Yeah, it was very cool, and then some of those I remember getting at Pizza Hut. So
exactly. I mean, I'm pretty sure I at least had one or two of them myself. This is a good general question that I like to ask everyone too, but an important one. When did you realize, either as a young person or an adult, that you wanted to be creative and be part of the comics community?
um, so creative was always a thing for me. I always wanted to write or act. Those were always things I was into, even as a kid. They were sort of the things I was most excited about. And I think at some point I realized that in a lot of cases, actors don't really get to decide what story they're telling. They're just trying to tell it the best they can. And the storytelling is my favorite part.
Right.
So while I enjoy acting, writing is much more sort of my jam. I think for a long time I didn't realize what went into making comics. I think a lot of people don't. But I think at one point, when I was first getting back into comics in my adult life, I read enough books that I think it occurred to me that there was a writer and an artist, and that you could be able to write comics without having to be able to draw, which is something that I do not have a gift for. And as much as my artist friends tell me that if you practice enough, you can get good, I could get good enough to do it. It sounds like a lot of work compared to doing a thing that I already feel like I'm pretty good at and really enjoy doing.
Right.
I love with the writing, I can, have a whole bunch of stories going on at the time, bouncing around, doing a bunch of different stuff, as compared to art on a comic takes quite a while. And, I know friends who, when they're drawing a graphic novel, that's their only thing they're doing for like this year.
Absolutely. Becomes very time consuming.
Oh, absolutely.
Another reader centric question I've got for you. What is something that's really stuck with you, you've read in the last 6 months to a year? It didn't have to come out in the last 6 months to a year, but something that you've read recently that's really stuck with you. Can be major, can be indie, or both, if you got both recommendations.
I'm gonna go a little sideways from this. I've been in the last year or the last couple of years, because I had been writing some stuff that is sort of manga and manga adjacent. I'd been reading a lot more manga, and I got into several series that I really enjoyed. But what I've been reading right now is Witch Hat Atelier,
Ooh.
which I wasn't expecting to really enjoy. There are a lot of sort of young witches mangas out there that have never really I'd never really run into those that I really loved. A lot of people love the Little Witch Academia and stuff like that, and this was one that, like, this series, I think I'm on volume 5 now, but I mean, the art is incredible. It's really, really well done. But also the story and the world are so sort of figured out. Like as soon as you're there, they sort of gradually explain the system of how their magic works, and there's years of sort of background of how this has worked into the story, and you sort of pick this up as you go, and it's all there from the beginning, but you don't really know what it means until you're getting further into it, and then you get to sort of like it, as a writer, it's really impressive to me to be reading this volume that was done like 6 or 7 years after their first volume, and see that like they're still working out and explaining stuff from that first volume. There's stuff that's connecting back. That it's really impressive to see just how well they had it figured out just to start.
That's right. I've seen it on the shelf, many a time as a librarian, and have not picked it up. So now, through your recommendation, I'm going to have to pick it up now.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I've been reading. That was one that I was tentative to pick up, but I had picked up this whole sort of strand of me reading a lot of manga. Started with reading. There's a one shot called "Look Back," which is written by the same creator, written and illustrated by the same creator who does Chainsaw Man, but is a real like slice of life drama thing about two kids who are like really getting into making manga, who are really getting into making comics and figuring out how it works, and is a really like powerful emotional story, and was like I didn't know anything about Chainsaw Man other than the cosplayers I'd seen at shows, and this one I was like, oh well, this guy actually is good, let me give these other things a chance, and ended up reading Chainsaw Man and a lot of his other stuff as well, and then got on sort of this kick of picking up a lot of other stuff and at least trying it. Not everything really clicks with me, but there are quite a few really good series out there.
Absolutely. I feel like it's almost the golden age for published manga, and there's just so many good stories being told out there, and because of libraries and bookstores, and there's so much available for people to get.
Oh yeah, I have taken great advantage of the Durham County Library System's manga collection, because I have been through several volumes of things that there's no way I'd be able to afford to read them at the pace that I do once I start going through it. And the library here is great, and I've not quite exhausted their manga yet, but there's I've been through quite a few of the series that aren't that don't take over full shelves, like One Piece or Bleach, which I don't have any intention of getting into.
That's fair. So for any viewers out there who may be new to your work, how do you introduce yourself as a creator?
So I am I'm a comics writer. I write other stuff too, but comics is my biggest thing. I am from Durham, North Carolina, so I'm live in the South. I tend to write things that are middle grades to YA with some adult stuff as well. But I think the thing that all of my books have in common is I tend to emphasize the diversity and uniqueness of my characters. I tend to have types of characters that I am not used to seeing in heroic stories or in comics. It's a huge priority for me. Characters with disabilities, queer characters, characters of different races, things like that. And telling stories that are both like meaningful and character driven, because I'm a big character guy. I'm not a huge plot guy. You're not going to find big intricate Jonathan Hickman plots in my stories, but like I tend to write about characters that I love and that people love. And I think my goal is always to have comics that are somebody's favorite comic. That really connect to people who maybe haven't seen themselves represented in a story before, or haven't felt represented by characters that are supposed to be like them in stories.
Absolutely.
I read a lot of different types of folks in in stories that they often don't appear in, which is definitely something that's true of these stories we're talking about today as well.
Yeah, you got that right. So, being a creator in the space of using Zoop for crowdfunding campaigns, on top of doing everything else you're probably doing in terms of art and writing, what does your creative work week look like for the next month or two here?
Oh, well, it is a lot of a combination of this of talking to folks about what we're doing and getting the word out there, but also posting about it, emailing about it, um, sending out information and press releases and things like that, getting just trying to get the attention of folks in a lot of cases who get a lot of information or who aren't prone to just stop and give to a creative work like this. It's a lot of just figuring out how to get their attention, figuring out where they're looking, talking to people that I know will support it if we can, get in their ear holes
Yep.
or their eye holes and just like get them to see what we're doing and to understand it. And yeah, a lot of I don't know. I have described my process for working on a crowd fund as basically just having a 30-day long panic attack.
Hmm.
Because it's one of those things that you keep thinking that there's a secret, or that there is another thing you can do just to get people to donate, to back you, to get interested in the thing. And it is basically just a quest to find that thing.
Right.
And I think for some folks that's easy. For some folks, their stories have a very obvious appeal to certain demographics. And I think for me, that's often a little harder because a lot of my books are sort of targeted to doing something that I don't feel like I've seen enough of.
Right. An excellent point.
Thanks.
And now we're going to actually dive into the main book of what we're talking about today. So if you can give us your pitch for this Slay the Girlfriend Survives double first issue, what what's going to be the hook for readers?
So it is. It's two first issues of two brand new books. They're both specifically for. They're both mature titles, so something that I don't think people see a lot from me necessarily. Slay being sort of a fantasy horror series, and Girlfriend Survives being a sort of a twist on the superhero genre. And basically, what we wanted to do is, we've been talking to Zoop about crowdfunding Slay already because we've been working on this book for a while, and they said, the perfect length for something like this to be is about 56 pages. That's the best value for money when it comes to printing.
Right.
I said that's about the length of two books. That would be a lot of special features to pack in the back of something, and I don't want it to feel like people aren't getting the value out of the book. What would be really neat is to take this other book that I'm also working on that I think is a very different story but carries some similar themes, and if we package these together, I used to love, there was this thing that Marvel used to do with annuals, especially back in the day in the late 90s, where they would package them sort of back to back. So you had a book that you would read, and then you'd flip it over, and facing the other side is another cover and a whole other comic book. So
Right.
You'd read Web of Spider-Man, you'd make it all the way to the end, and you'd flip the thing over, and there'd be a whole nother book on the other side. This seemed like a cool opportunity with this, both to get two books out there for the price of one,
Yeah.
and also to sort of have this opportunity for people who are funding it, who are backing this crowdfund, to get a wholly unique sort of artifact out of this in this double feature, which future printings will obviously be Slay with its own series and Girlfriend Survives with their own series, rather than having a same thing like we're doing here. So people that back it they'll be able to continue these stories elsewhere, but they'll also have this like really unique piece of art where these two things are combined in a way that they new people won't be able to see otherwise.
Absolutely. I don't think I've seen something like that before, to be honest. So I think it's a really cool, unique format that you're doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like the only places where people generally use it right now that I've really seen it used in the last few years is with Free Comic Book Day, and then that's just usually two ads back to back. It's just an ad for a different book on the other side with 4 pages of that book instead of 4 pages of this. But this is 2 complete first issues, 2 full size first issues of stories, and they have while people who have read my work will, I think, sort of recognize that there's stuff that goes through all of my books that is included in both of these things. They are very different types of stories and very different types of settings.
Excellent. But like you said, there's some themes that connect the two. So now we're going to delve a little bit into the first one, Slay, a little bit. Let me pull up the artwork just for that one. So Alex Smith's art, Kelly Fitzpatrick's colors, Taylor Esposito's letters. How did they, collectively all together? Do you feel they brought the kind of that horror Western vibe to it? Because this cover is awesome.
Yeah, I really love this cover. This one, I go through a lot of like pitching ideas for covers to artists, and this was really one that like Alex sort of was like, yeah, I got an idea, and put it together. And I think really gets sort of the spirit of this thing, because it is this story about, this girl who is sort of an aspiring monster hunter. She discovers that her, at this point, long deceased mom was also a monster hunter, and she wants to sort of follow in that path. So she is looking for this legendary monster hunter, the Scarred Rider, who used to ride with her mom to try and train her. But in the course of doing so, she's also got to eat. So she decides to try and take one of the bounties that have been put out for the Scarred Rider of this monster that's attacking this town. And very quickly, in pretending to be the Scarred Rider, gets in very much over her head, both with the monster and with the Scarred Rider herself, who does show up. And I think what is really cool about this to me is has this Western feel of being sort of on the frontier and out away from people, and you don't know what's around the next corner. But it is also sort of set in the mountains, and sort of I'm not sure if we said this in the first issue, but it's sort of set in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. So it's very tree heavy, lots of snow and everything. Not a setting you see in every Western, as compared to the desert, but it has still, I think, a lot of the elements of what make Westerns really enjoyable, without a lot of the sort of historical Western pieces you might have.
Absolutely. And as someone who grew up on Westerns, my dad really watched a lot of Westerns growing up, so I love that kind of element. And this is actually more of a personal question for you in terms of enjoying kind of the final product. Is there any specific scenes or panels within, Slay that you're like, wow, this is cool stuff, or I'm really proud of it either way?
There's a lot through here. I really love the character designs for both of our leads, both Layla, who is our main lead, and the Scarred Rider, who is our sort of legendary hero, are both very cool. She has Scarred Rider has a very sort of a black woman's twist on the sort of traditional lone rider look to her. And I think, Layla sort of has this air, I think, of somebody who is a little overconfident, a little overexcited to go in, just even in her design.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to me. I really love a good chunk of this takes place in the woods. There's a big fight scene with her and this Nachtbar, which is the creature that lives out in the woods that she's trying to find. And I think between sort of like Alex is really inky blacks and the very sparse color that Kelly is giving it, it really sort of really evokes this feeling of the sometimes scariness of the woods at night, but also like it really makes the all the blood and everything stand out. It's really strong reds in this book, and so like the scene where the Noctbar first appears in front of her or behind her is really cool, and then you get sort of this fight that is sort of in and out of the shadows that I think it really sings. It's really amazing to look at.
Yeah, this just the cover alone, because I got the digital, but I'm definitely now going to get some physical because I want to see kind of this artwork in like the really close, printed format. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. And you mentioned this a little bit in one of the previous questions, but from kind of the idea in your head for something like this to this setting up this campaign, how long of a time frame are we talking about?
Oh, this one is quite a bit longer than most, I would say, just because both Alex and I have been through several life changes, different books, other things going on while we've been sort of making this in the background. Alex in the time this has been going on has had a divorce, moved across the country, has a completely different life than he did when we first started, but he's also a perfectionist, so it was a lot of he was off of something for a while and come back and look at it and be like, I don't like these pages anymore, I'm going to redo these pages. So a lot of going back and forth on that and sort of reshaping how we wanted to introduce this narrative, because I very much wanted this focus on Layla, and having a character like Ryder is cool because there's a lot to explore, there's a lot to do there, but she also doesn't talk a lot, and putting too much of her voice into it felt wrong. I want her to stay mysterious, and I'm not always good at writing mysterious because I tend to be a person that kind of wears my heart on my sleeve myself.
Yeah, I can see that in your characters.
Yeah, so it's a lot of going back and looking at her dialogue and trimming a little more down and trimming a little more down and making her a little meaner, because I think that's what really works in a sort of relationship like this is you have this character who's very not necessarily sunshiny but excited and bouncy and wanting to do everything, and the character who is grumpy and has seen it all and it does not have time for shenanigans.
Absolutely. And this is another kind of question on the back end of things. Whenever you get a kind of a printed comic or even just a draft, do you find yourself able to enjoy it, or do you find yourself kind of nitpicking at your storytelling elements or things that you're like, oh well, I wish I could tweak this a little bit, or do you find yourself you can actually enjoy it?
I think with a lot of books, especially if they are things that I've been working on for a while, they've been through so many drafts by the time they actually get to print that I'm mostly just excited to see them in print.
It's fair.
That it's nice to get it out there. There will inevitably be somewhere in a book where I forget that I had written something. I'll forget that I had we had implied one thing and inevitably written another thing later in the story. That happens a lot when there's long space between stuff coming out. So that does happen where I'll read things and see oh man, I wish I had thought about this. I wish I'd read this one thing over and fixed it up. But mostly I find that, especially coming back to things that I wrote a few years back, I'm always pleasantly surprised by how good I was at the time. Because I always think I was worse than I was. I go back and look at pages and I go, oh no, that's not that bad. That was pretty good. That guy knew what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah, because I always remember the things that I did wrong. And when I go back and read the stuff, I'm surprised to find all the things I did right.
That's a good way of putting it, actually. So now we get to dive in a little bit to the other title, The Girlfriend Survives. So Luke's illustrations and Jamie's colors, how, in this particular title, how does the style kind of contrast Slave for, like you're saying, that flip effect?
Yeah, it's a very different style. It's much more of a traditional, I think somewhere between slice of life and superhero art.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie's colors are bright and vibrant, which is completely different than what we're doing in Slay, where it's intentionally very washed out and Western. Um, and it's a completely different vibe, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Because we wanted to do something quite a bit different there, and it certainly has a much stronger relation to superhero stuff, the things that we traditionally see in comics, but taking these tropes that are so common that we have names for them in superhero stories and sort of flipping them on their head.
Yeah, exactly. And then superhero stories from kind of the unwitting girlfriend, point of view. Is there any ties to your kind of princeless roots for that one, for that particular theme?
Um, Interestingly, I mean, I think there certainly is. I don't think it's something I really thought about on those terms so much as I think both books deal with very like trope heavy areas of fiction.
Okay.
And I think Princeless, it was always very intentional that like we would steer towards like, all right, here is a common trope in fairy tales and princess fiction. And then when it came time to like get to that trope, go completely the other direction. So like make whatever left turn we had to like do something that I had never really seen before.
Right.
And so I think that is where it has something in common with Girlfriend Survives, because Girlfriend Survives takes, I think, as you may guess from the cover, the concept of fridging, the concept of it goes back to Gail Simone sort of coining the term about how Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern's girlfriend, was in his comic murdered and dismembered and left in a refrigerator to motivate the male character's plot rather than to do anything for her as a character or to tell any story that involved her as a meaningful piece of it. And so, we're sort of taking that from the point of view of this woman who is the girlfriend of the secret identity, the normal, mild-mannered man, and finds herself in the crosshairs of this arch supervillain, and proves to have a little bit more to her than anybody expects, but it sort of puts her in a position of being of things being even more perilous and ongoing. So, she's got some surprises up her sleeves, but she's still working very hard, having to work very hard just to survive at this point.
Man, that sounds really good. I'm looking forward to delving into that one too. So for the viewers out there, I did put the Zoop campaign link in the chat so you can see it there, and it'll also be in the description of the video when we post it to YouTube later on. So please make sure to check out the campaign and support it. So what we're actually going to do now is actually pull up that page, which is cool. So for this campaign, Jeremy, if you can talk any reward tiers that you think you should talk about, or anything unique that kind of stands out as rewards and things that people can get.
Yeah, obviously there are the usual things, digital and physical copies. Obviously, the digital ones, how reversible they are depends on how much you want to flip your laptop around. But the comics are reversible. We have two covers, both our principal covers that everybody's seen, and then a variant cover for each that was done by Colors Jamie Noguchi, who was also my artist on School for Extraterrestrial Girls, for anybody who's read that. And that has a special loudly anti-ice cover on the Girlfriend Survives part, which you can see sort of the sketch of on there.
Yes.
That's still in the process of being colored as we speak. There's also options to get both of those. There's options to get prints of both of these covers in there as well. But I think some of the really cool stuff that we have options for is stuff beyond just these two books. We have options for commissions from three of the artists. So
yeah.
Alex, Luke, and Jamie are all offering commissions as part of this. They Luke's is digital and it's 75, so basically he will draw whatever you want to within his parameters and send you that digitally. And then both Alex and Jamie have physical ones, so you can draw them and then get an actual copy of it. If you are a person who is interested in making comics or who is interested in writing creative endeavors, I also have an editorial review option on there. So if you buy that along with your comics, you can basically get an opportunity to chat with me and have me review something you're working on. I've been in comics for 15 years now, so certainly have some insight to help you get going on your stuff. Those are obviously a limited number because that is something that is going to take some time. I will definitely sit down and
that's a great price for that, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to understand that we're in a point in an economy that not everybody has a ton of money, but it would be enough that it makes a pretty significant difference in our Zoop campaign. So yeah, we've got a couple more of those still up for grabs. And then if you're a fan of mine, there are a couple of options for signed comics here, which I have 2 variants of previous comics I've done. If you're a big Marvel person, there's a signed Strange Tales #1, which we have a couple of copies of, which has this variant that Gretel Lusky did for it that has Scarlet Witch in this Dragon Slayer armor that we created for this story, which I thought was such a cool design that when they were moving forward with the variants, I was like, you have to get somebody to do a variant of her in this armor because it's so cool. Bailey Underwood, who was the artist on that series, created this look for her, and I was immediately blown away.
A quick question on the Strange Tales. How many issues are you doing within that?
Strange Tales actually just wrapped up. It was a 4-issue miniseries.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I posted just I think it was last week. The last issue came out. I was like, officially Halloween is over. As of the end of January, Halloween is finished.
I'll have to have you back on the show for when the trade comes out for that.
Yeah, so that'll I believe their plan is to have that trade out in September, so that it can feature again for Halloween, because their hope with that book is to have something that's sort of an evergreen, spooky Marvel story that can be sold every Halloween.
That's good.
Yeah, and so the other comic up there for anybody who hasn't read any of my Princeless stuff is a variant that we did for Raven the Pirate Princess, which was our spinoff of Princeless, and features art by Sora Sung, who is a good friend of mine and a great artist who did this New York Comic Con special variant for us several years back. I want to say this is 2016, but it's just an absolutely beautiful cover. I still had a handful of them tucked away, and people love it. So I was, figured we'd throw a few copies of that on there, and anybody who hasn't been able to procure one thus far can get a copy of that signed from me as part of the campaign.
Excellent. Yeah, there's some really good choices overall. And this is another good question, kind of geared towards your personal experiences on this project. Are you getting to try anything new or kind of experimental or new techniques or anything in your storytelling?
It's been interesting because I think they're very different types of stories. I think the Girlfriend Survives, I wrote with, started writing with a very clear objective toward having a mini series. It'll be finished at the end of, I believe it's 5 issues. But I wanted to make it twists and turns, and you don't know what's coming around the bend the next time. So it's sort of fun to play in that space with superhero stuff. There's been so many occasions working on stuff for big companies that do superhero things that I came up with a fun thing I wanted to do, and they told me no, or not like that, or do it this way. And this is very much my chance to sort of run free and do my weird things that I want to do in this story. It is much more, both of these are much more violent than I think people are used to from me. I think the only the only book I've had come out that is, or I guess books I've had come out that are on equal footing as far as violence is I did a very short run on Vampirella at one point that is very bloody. And then I did a graphic novel for Titan a few years ago called The Cold Ever After, which has a similar sort of fantasy but noir vibe in the way that Slay is sort of fantasy but horror. So I think that's definitely very different. And I wanted to, I think the thing that's most unusual about Slay for me probably is just trying to do a storytelling that is much lighter on dialogue than what mine often is, because I am a dialogue guy. I will admit to that all day long. I am a dialogue heavy writer. And this is, as a lot of Westerns are, is sort of sparse on dialogue, has one character who really likes to talk and one character who does her best not to at all. Is used to sort of being out there on her own. So that's a thing that's really been a challenge for me, is to like pack those bits of character into relatively little dialogue.
Excellent point. And you touched on this a couple of questions ago, but what can you, at least what you can share for plans for either one of these series beyond these first two issues?
So my plan is with The Girlfriend Survives, it is a mini series. So, while I don't ever rule out the possibility of doing more of something down the line anytime really, is very much designed to wrap up in 5 issues. My hope is, to either find a publisher who's interested in continuing to going for it from here, or continue to crowdfund, one of the two. But I really love that book, and I would love to keep working with Luke and Jamie to make that something really fun and cool and strange.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, it's a thing I'm excited for. But also on top of that, like, Slay is definitely designed to be a much bigger world. So my hope with that is to find a home for that where we can keep doing issues of it and keep getting to draw horrible monsters and blood curdling death. That's part of the fun of it, is the doing these fun characters, but also coming up with new horrible things for them to run into all the time.
Absolutely, that sounds really fun, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that book is largely driven by my my feelings about, like, I love fantasy. I love fantasy stuff, and I think I have sometimes not always been able to go with my wilder ideas, because I talk a lot about Princeless and how the first thing I did in that book is give Adrian a sword, but I can't have her stab anybody because It's a middle grades book. And so, like, there's a lot of fun stuff we get to do there, but almost every fight involves somebody losing a weapon or falling down or getting kicked or something like that. That's how fights end in there. Whereas what I love the concept of placing these giant fantasy monsters in a relatively modern setting.
Yes.
Because, I mean, just as an example, a dragon wouldn't just be a big monster. It wouldn't just be a big lizard. That thing is an ecological disaster for wherever it's at. There's smoke, there's fire, there's all sorts of issues. Nothing. It's not going to leave anything alive where it's been. So getting to sort of play with that idea and make it as big as possible is what I'm hoping to do with Slay, and to continue to tell a story about those characters fighting these things that are way bigger than anything they should be able to deal with.
Right. That sounds really fun. And getting to our closing section now, but this is a really fun question I'd like to bring up. Has there been any fan interactions or reader feedback you've received over the years that have been either memorable or just kind of took you by surprise?
Oh, there's always memorable feedback and interactions with fans. That's part of why I love doing conventions. Is
100%.
Online is nice. Meeting people in online who are excited about stuff is is great and it's one thing, but getting to like have people that are excited about telling me about how much this thing influenced their life, people who are excited to hug me, who show up dressed as my characters. I've had the experience of doing this long enough, especially with Princeless, that there are readers who, Princeless was their first comic, or it was their introduction to sort of the world of fantasy and comics stuff, and they are adults now. They started reading these things 15 years ago, and they're in their 20s now. They come dressed as sometimes my characters, sometimes other characters, and they're huge parts of these fan communities, and they have all these nice things to say about all the all the things that these works have meant to them. And I think I discover new things like that with writing characters all the time. Just in the last couple of years, I did a Gwenpool story where Gwen came out as being Ace, and that, like, even though that book has never been available physically, it's only a digital book with Marvel. I have had more people come up to the table at conventions and say, like, this is the first time that they had seen their experience described in a story, or that they felt like this was a superhero who had really dealt with the same things that they deal with in their day-to-day life, and how much that meant to them. And even a few people who came to the understanding that maybe they are asexual or are aromantic from reading this book, because it's not something that you necessarily it's not something that is as free to find out about and as easy to discover as other types of sexual orientations.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. And you mentioned this earlier too, a little bit, but what can you share about any upcoming convention appearances for yourself?
Ooh, well, that is still a little bit in flux. I guess we'll see. I would love to do more shows if there are people looking for guests, as long as they're willing to help me get out there and put me up. I am pretty open to doing stuff. I know for sure that I'm going to be doing Heroes Con in Charlotte this year, which is fairly close to me.
I hear a lot of good things about that show.
Yeah, if you're a big fan of comics, and especially comics art, they go out of their way to bring in a lot of both current and classic artists. If you are a comics art collector at all, it is one of the biggest and best shows you can go to, because they have they do an auction of pieces to support the convention, but also, like, they get people out there to shows that you wouldn't, especially if you live in the southeast, because this is Charlotte. This is your only opportunity to see a lot of those guys. And they come from all over the country and all over the world. And there's always a handful of guys there that I've never seen anywhere else, that just come and set up a table and are just excited to come out and meet people. They have a huge group of great artists out there every year.
Excellent. This is kind of just a follow-up to Slay and the Girlfriend Survives, but what you can share, is there anything else kind of in the works for the rest of 2026 that you can talk about?
Let's see. There are several things I can't talk about. School for Extraterrestrial Girls, my and Jamie's series, has a third volume coming out this year that will finish up this trilogy. There are more things we'd love to do in the world, but this, I think, finishes up the story that we've been telling for the past 2 volumes, of sort of following this friendship of these girls, all sort of trying to find their place in the universe at this school after discovering they're aliens through various different means. And that one is a lot of fun. If people haven't read it, it is through paper cuts, and I know it goes under some people's radars. But Jamie's art is incredible, and the book is a lot of fun. and that'll be coming out this summer.
Nice.
I know
Paper Cuts is a great publisher. They put out great stuff. They really do.
Yeah, I'm doing some other work with them. I think the first volume I worked on has already come out, but I've done some writing for their Miraculous Chibi line. So if you're familiar with Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir, got to do some short, mostly silent stories in there, in the sort of the chibi style, which is a lot of fun. There's, I think, one of those out and at least two more that are coming during this year. But those are really enjoyable. I know that I have other things coming out too, but I think that might be all that I can talk about. Dog Night, the Dog Night series, and the first one of those is obviously already out. It's already banned in some places. But we are almost finished with the second one. It was supposed to come out later this year, but publishing speed is such that it's gotten pushed back to early 2027. So I think what people should see is next year in 2027, both the second book of the Dog Night, which is called Chaos Bites Back, and my podcast co-host Ben Kahn's book, which is called The Dashing School for Wayward Princes, which is about a school that teaches toxic masculinity to princes, should both be coming out next year. And I think, I think we have one or two more surprises mixed in there too that we can't talk about just yet.
All right. Well, that's definitely a good teaser for future appearances. Our second to last question. So where can people find you online and follow along with all the stuff you're working on?
So my website is jeremywhittley.com. That is sort of a good place to start. If you want to find me on social media, Blue Sky is usually the place these days. And I'm just Jeremy Whitley there. If you're still on Tumblr, I'm also Jeremy Whitley there. But Tumblr is increasingly less useful, I find.
Yeah.
But Blue Sky for sure. You can find my podcast, Progressively Horrified, where we talk about horror movies and politics every week, and whether or not horror movies are progressive. That comes out, I mean, that's wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find that, but it comes out every Friday. If you like horror movies, or even if you don't, if you like listening to people talking about horror movies, but you don't really like the experience of watching them, which I know we have several listeners that are in that category, then that's a great one for you to check out. And of course, the site for this campaign is zoop.gg/C/slay. Or if you go to the Zoop website, it's ZOOP. We should be right there on the front page as long as we're still going.
Yeah, when I went to the page earlier, you guys were on the front page too. And like I said earlier, it'll be in the description of the video when we post it on YouTube too. So there's no excuse for you to at least not to check out the campaign page. So
yeah, we really appreciate people jumping in wherever they can. Every little bit helps. We've got 20 days left, but we're already a bit over halfway.
Nice.
So yeah, it is. We definitely need more folks, but we are, I think, well on our way. So if you jump in and help us get it made, there's a very good chance that it'll get funded, and you can get all sorts of cool stuff, including all those unique, one-of-a-kind prizes that we talked about, like commissions from the artists, and even editorial help from me.
That's right. And there are a lot of digital readers out there. I know there's a lot of people that they're only exclusive readers, which is great. So my last question to close this out is a odd one but fun one. What is your favorite snack or meal when you need to work on a project for a few hours?
Ooh. I mean, coffee, obviously.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, coffee is sort of something I've got to have, especially when it's hard, when it's long days. But I am a I'm a sucker for Nutty Buddies.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I love a good little Debbie treat, especially, the Nutty Buddies. You get the chocolate and the peanut butter and the wafers. It's it's a perfect combination. And yeah, it's my go-to treat these days.
Excellent. You're the first person to mention that, so I'm glad I'm getting to hear some all kinds of answers on that. I love hearing of people. There's a lot of people that say I don't snack at all, or I wait until after I finish something and then I eat. So it's kind of nice to hear everyone's different responses.
Yeah, it's there are some things that are great to eat for when you're working on something. Some things that are difficult. Soup is a bad one.
Yeah,
I love Takis, but like you end up with flavorful grit all over your keyboard.
that's so true.
But yeah, I've just finished out the last of our Girl Scout cookies for the year. So unfortunately, I don't have those to snack on anymore.
I'm sure the next season's not too far away. So,
Always.
all right, Jeremy. Well, that's the end of our conversation today. It's been a wonderful time having you on the show. Thank you again for coming on. I know it's not easy to book these things, so thank you again for taking some time and coming on Comics for All.
Well, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'll have to come talk to you next time. I've got more stuff coming up.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you on again. So everybody out there, thanks for hanging with us for 51, almost 52 minutes now. So this has been Comics for All, where comics, creativity, and community all connect. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Almost.